air raids started in Auschwitz sometime end of August. And to me, seeing the airplane with the American flag on one of the wings was extremely important, because that gave me hope that somebody was trying to free us. And hope in Auschwitz was in very short supply. The air raids continued and increased, and with each time the air raids increased by one air raid a day, our experiments dropped by 1 day a week. So by October, we had 3 air raids a day, and our experiments dropped to 4 days a week. By November, end of November, we had 4 air raids a day, and all the experiments stopped. We could sense that continuous air raid and artillery could not last much longer, that someday soon we would be free and we would go home. But we didn't exactly know how that would happen. Early January, the Nazis told us, everybody out of the barracks, we are taking you deep into Germany to protect you from the fighting. And I didn't like the Nazis when they were winning the war. I figured they would be even meaner now that they were losing the war. So we decided in our barrack to stay in the barrack. Next morning we woke up, we opened the barrack doors, and all the guard towers were empty, all the Nazis were gone, we were on our own. From the Auschwitz Museum, I have learned that from the 150,000 inmates in Auschwitz, only 8,500 remained. The rest of them were marched in the death march. So for the next 2 weeks, we were on our own. We went organizing bread, water, and blankets. And it was about 2 weeks after they left, I was in the kitchen and loaded up with as many loaves of bread as I could carry when I heard the strange sound of a car. No one had cars but the Nazis. When we went outside, there was an army vehicle like a jeep. 4 Nazis jumped off and they began spraying bullets in every direction. The last thing I remember was the barrel of the gun pointed at my head, and then I faded away. I woke up sometime later, and it took me a while to realize that all these people lying next to me were dead and I was alive. I raced back to the barrack where Miriam was watching our belongings, told her what happened, and we were sad that people were murdered so close to the liberation. Then we were a little bit concerned, why did the Nazis come back? That wasn't good news. We found out that they blew up the gas chamber, the crematorium, the Canada building, and they were trying to eliminate as much of the evidence in buildings and in people that they could find. Our barrack was on fire. We couldn't stand the heat. We walked outside. The same 4 Nazis were waiting for us and marching us. When we arrived in Auschwitz I, they disappeared as if the earth swallowed them up. The Allies were outside the city limits, and therefore heavy fighting was raging in the area. One day I needed desperately drinking water because there was nothing to drink, and I went to the nearby river. I broke the ice, lowered the container tied to a string, and when I looked up, there was a little girl, my age. She was dressed in beautiful, clean clothes, and she was carrying a school bag. That was my first time to realize that in that big, big world there were children who looked like children and even went to school. A few days later, everything was very quiet. We thought maybe this would be the day we would be free. Late in the afternoon of January 27, 1945, at about 4:30 p.m., a woman ran into the barrack yelling at the top of her voice, "We are free, we are free, we are free." Well, we got all very excited. I looked down from the 2-story building and I couldn't see anything below. It was snowing heavily. So we got down to see, was this woman telling the truth? Did she know what she was talking about? And after about 30 minutes, I could see people at a distance. They were all dressed in white camouflage raincoats, smiling from ear to ear. And the most important thing was that they didn't look like the Nazis. We ran up to them. They gave us chocolate, cookies, and hugs. And that was my first taste of freedom. This was the Soviet army, the Ukrainian unit that liberated Auschwitz. That night, they came into the barrack, had some vodka, and danced some Russian dances. They surveyed the camp for the next 3 days, and then they came back 3 days later, put on a striped prison uniforms, and asked us to march between the two rows of barbed wire fences. That is a completely staged liberation picture. We were already free. But I am glad that they filmed it, so at least I have some information about the way we looked when we were liberated almost 70 years ago.